So, hello students. Today we are going to discuss current electricity NCRT example part 1. So, this is the disclaimer. Learning objectives that we are going to learn from this topic and from this today's lecture. So, you are going to understand the behavior of current density J in circular conductors and its relationship with current I. You are going to understand Kirchhoff's laws to analyze complex circuits. You are going to master the concepts of resistance calculations in conductors with different geometrical configurations, including the effects of length, cross-sectional area, and material properties. And comprehend the temperature dependence of resistivity in different materials, semiconductors, insulators, and metals. We are going to understand the working principle of Wheatstone bridge, particularly the null point method. We are going to analyze the relationship between relaxation time, electric field, and temperature in conductors and their implications for Ohm's law and resistance behavior. And you are gonna evaluate practical considerations in electrical wiring applications, including the comparison between different conducting materials. So the topics that we are going to cover today. So in current electricity chapter, there are total 31 NCRT example problems, but in today's lecture, we are going to cover 11 problems, which is 3.1, 3.2, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7 to 10, and 3.13, and 3.14, and 3.16. So first NCRT example problem, which is 3.1, that is multiple choice questions. Consider a current carrying conductor I in the shape of a circle. Note that as the current progresses along the wire, the direction of J changes. J is current density here, in an exact manner while the current I remains unaffected. The agent that is essentially responsible for this options are source of EMF, electric field produced by charges accumulated on the surface of wire, the charges just behind a given segment of wire which push them just the right way by repulsion, the charges ahead. Okay, so I will give you some time to think about it. Let's see the solution. So correct answer is B option. Electric field produced by charges accumulated on the surface of wire. Solution using concept 17.4.1. Okay, as we have discussed that in current electricity, there are moving charges. But the option is that is correct is electric field produced by charges accumulated on the surface of wire. So what are these charges we are going to discuss? So current per unit area taken normal to the current I by A is called current density. Okay, you already know that current density is current upon area and it is denoted by J. So it is J is bold because it is a vector quantity. The SI units of current density is ampere per meter square. Current density is also directed along E, that is electric field vector, and is also a vector, and relationship is given by J is equal to sigma E, where sigma is the conductivity of the conductor. That is also a relation according to Ohm's law. That is vector form of Ohm's law. So where sigma is conductivity of conductor. The J changes due to electric field produced by charges accumulated on the surface of wire. What are these charges? Okay, so when moving charges, when there are moving charges, like free electrons that move inside a conductor, okay, so when there is a variation in the cross section or change of path of the moving electrons, then there will be some charges accumulate due to the imbalance of charge distribution. Okay, when there is a variation in cross section of the wire or there is change in path of current, then there will be some, at that point there will be some imbalance in the charge distribution. Due to this imbalance in the charge distribution, some charges get accumulated on the surface of wire. Okay, due to which local electric field generate, which results into change in the direction of current and which results into change in current density. But current is a current is a scalar quantity. Okay, so amount of current doesn't change, only direction of current change. But J's current density is vector quantity, it depends on direction. So as the direction of current is changing, okay, so due to which J will change, that current density will change. The accumulation of charges is due to imbalance of charge distribution. Okay, this is due to imbalance of charge distribution, as I already mentioned, inside the conductor, due to variations of cross section area or in change of path. If we change the area or reverse the path of the current, okay, if we bend the wire, okay, so current will flow through the wire, but it will at the corner where wire is being bent. So from that corner, the current have to change the direction. Okay, how the current will change direction? So when the moving charges will reach at that corner, at that end where the wire is being bent, so at that corner there is small imbalance of charge distribution, due to which some charges will get accumulated on the surface, due to which a local electric field gets generated. Local electric field, not throughout the conductor, only at that corner. So that electric field will result in change in path of the current carriers of the moving electrons, due to which direction of current will get changed. Okay, but amount of current remains constant. But current density is vector quantity. So if the direction of current is changing, so this current density will also change. Accumulated charges on the surface produce local electric fields. That electric field changes the path of the moving charges, leading to the change in direction of current density J. Note that the current progresses along the wire, the direction of J changes only, while the current I remains unaffected, because I is a scalar quantity. Amount of current will not change. So current remains unaffected. Only direction of J, current density, will change. So option A is incorrect, because local electric field is produced by charges accumulated on the surface of the wire, not by EMF source. Okay, so the direction of current density is changing due to local electric fields, not by EMF source. The source of EMF provides the initial energy to derive the current through the circuit. So it will provide the initial energy to the flow of current. Okay, it will not result in local deviations of path of the current. It does not directly influence the local variation in the current density along the wire. So option C is also incorrect. Why? The charges just behind a given segment of wire do not push the current in the right way by repulsion. Electrostatic repulsion between charges can influence the distribution of charges. So electrostatic repulsion between charges can influence the distribution of charges, but not that much. But it is the electric field produced by the accumulated charges on the surface of the wire that directly affects the current density. Okay, so electrostatic repulsion only influences the distribution of charges. It will not change the current density. Current density is changed by electric field produced by the accumulated charges. Okay. Option D is incorrect because the charges ahead of a given segment of wire do not directly influence the current. Similarly to the previous option, C option, charges behind or ahead do not directly influence the current density. The current density is primarily affected by local electric field, as I've already mentioned, which is produced by charges accumulated on the surface of wire. Okay, next question. Two batteries of EMF epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. Epsilon 2 is greater than epsilon 1, and internal resistance R1 and R2 respectively are connected in parallel as shown in figure. Okay, two cells with internal resistance R1 and R2 are connected as shown in the figure between points A and B. The options: two equivalent EMF, the two equivalent EMF E equivalent of two cells between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2, that is E equivalent is between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. Okay, so the equivalent EMF E equivalent of the two cells is between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. Okay, option A is this. Second option is the equivalent EMF epsilon equivalent is smaller than epsilon 1. C option is the epsilon equivalent is given by epsilon equivalent equal to epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2. Okay, in parallel combination, can we give the equivalent EMF by the direct sum as mentioned in the C option? Epsilon equivalent equal to epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2. Okay, you have to determine. And epsilon equivalent is independent of internal resistance R1 and R2. So you have to choose the correct option. So I will give you some time to think about it. So correct option is A. Two equivalent EMFs, epsilon equivalent of the two cells in is between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. So E equivalent is, that is E equivalent is between E1 and E2. Okay. So EMF can be represented by E or epsilon both. Okay. So if I am saying E1 or epsilon 1, I am representing the same thing. Using concept 17.10.2, the equivalent EMF of this combination is given by. So for parallel combination, we have discussed in theory lectures that what is epsilon equivalent? The equivalent EMF is given by epsilon 2 R1 plus epsilon 1 R2 upon R1 plus R2. This is the expression for equivalent EMF for two cells that are connected in parallel. So if we take epsilon 2 as common, okay, if we take from the numerator epsilon 1 as common, so epsilon 2 as common, so it will become, in bracket it will, what expression will remain? R1 plus epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 into R2. Okay, this is the expression left in the bracket. If we take epsilon 2 common, so with epsilon 2 is with R1, so we will take common, so it will remove from R1. Now, where epsilon 1 was with R2, but we took common epsilon 2, so epsilon 2 will get divided with that portion of the numerator. So this result, you know how it came. Okay, epsilon equivalent is equal to epsilon 2 in bracket R1 plus, we took epsilon 2 common from both the expressions. Now, since epsilon 2 greater than epsilon 1, okay, since epsilon 2 is greater than epsilon 1, so ratio epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 will be less than 1, because denominator is greater than numerator. This is simple maths. You all can understand. So epsilon 2 is greater than denominator is greater than numerator. So this ratio will be less than 1. So from that equation in previous slide, so R1 plus epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 R2. Since epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 is less than 1, so this term in the left hand side of inequality, that is epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 R2, this term will be less than R2. Means epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 is less than 1 na? So it is multiplying by R2. So if some value less than 1 is multiplying with R2, so whole term will be less than R2. So this left term will be less than R1 plus R2. Okay, this you all understood? This left hand side R1 plus epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 R2 will be less than R1 plus R2. Because epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 is less than 1. Okay. So the ratio of R1 plus epsilon 1 upon epsilon 2 R2 upon R1 plus R2 will be less than 1. Because numerator is less than denominator. So this ratio will be less than 1. So that equation from equation 1. So equation 1 from equation 1 E equivalent will be less than E2. So E equivalent EMF will be less than the EMF of second cell. This thing we have derived. Okay, now we will see for epsilon 1. Now again the formula for equivalent EMF is equal to epsilon 2 R1 plus epsilon 1 R2 upon R1 plus R2. Again this formula came. Now we will take, in previous case we have taken epsilon 2 as common. Now we will take epsilon 1 as common. So take epsilon 1 as common. It will become epsilon 1 in bracket epsilon 2 upon epsilon 1 R1 plus R2 upon R1 plus R2. Mark it as second equation. Since epsilon 2 is greater than epsilon 1, so ratio of epsilon 2 upon epsilon 1 will be greater than 1. Because epsilon 2 is greater than epsilon 1. So their ratio will be greater than 1. So epsilon 2 upon epsilon 1 R1 plus R2. Since epsilon 2 upon epsilon 1 is greater than 1, so this whole term will be greater than R1 plus R2. So since the numerator in this term epsilon 2 upon epsilon 1 R1 plus R2, this is greater than R1 plus R2, so their ratio will be greater than 1. So from equation 2, we can write epsilon equivalent greater than epsilon 1. So the equivalent EMF epsilon equivalent of the two cells is now given by. So from both these cases, we can write here that epsilon equivalent is between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2. Okay. So equivalent EMF is between EMF of first cell and EMF of second cell. The equivalent EMF will always be between epsilon 1 and epsilon 2, not smaller than epsilon 2. So B option is incorrect and A option is correct. Option A is correct option. Okay. Now option C. Option C was the equivalent EMF is given by epsilon 1 plus epsilon 2 always is incorrect, because correct formula for equivalent EMF for the parallel combination is this. Okay. This formula takes into account the internal resistance of the batteries, and equivalent EMF is not simply the sum of individual EMFs. What was option D? Epsilon equivalent is independent of internal resistance R1 and R2 is incorrect also, because the formula for equivalent EMF is given by this formula. This clearly shows that equivalent EMF depends on the internal resistance R1 and R2 also. Okay. Next question, NCERT exemplar problem 3.5. A metal rod of length 10 cm and a rectangular cross section of 1 centimeter into half centimeter is connected by a battery across opposite faces, the resistance will be options. Maximum when the battery is connected across 1 centimeter into half centimeter faces. Maximum when battery is connected across 10 centimeter in 1 centimeter faces. Maximum when the battery is connected across 10 centimeter into half centimeter faces. Same irrespective of the three faces. Okay. I will give you some time to think about it. I recommend you to write the options at least, so you don't have to look back. So correct option is A. Maximum when the battery is connected across 1 centimeter into half centimeter faces. So using concept 17.8, this concept number is from your formula book. What is the thinking process for this question? The resistance of the wire depends on its geometry. Here the metallic rod behaves as a wire. So let's see the answer. The resistance of the wire is given by R equal to rho L by A. For greater value of R, L must be higher and A should be lower. So A for R equal to rho L by A. So it is resistance is directly proportional to length of the conductor. Resistance is inversely proportional to area of cross section. So for greater R, L must be higher and A should be lower. So you can see all the options and you can analyze that in which option L is maximum and R is minimum. Oh, sorry, A is minimum. Okay, so it is possible when the battery is connected across area of cross section A equal to 1 centimeter into half centimeter and length equal to 10 centimeter. It is possible in first option where there is least amount of area and maximum length. So next question, NCERT Exemplar 3.6. Which of the following characteristics of the electrons determine the current in a conductor? Options: drift velocity alone, thermal velocity alone, both drift velocity and thermal velocity, neither drift nor thermal velocity. So which characteristic of electron determine the current in the conductor? Okay, so these are the four options. I will give you some time to think about it. So correct option is A, drift velocity alone. So using concept 17.2, let's see the answer. The relationship between current and drift speed is given by this: I equal to NEAVD, where N is number density of electrons, E is charge on the electron, A is area of cross section of the conductor, and VD is the drift velocity of electrons. So where I is the current and VD is drift velocity. So I is directly proportional to drift velocity here. Okay, so there is no relation of current with the thermal velocity. Okay, only drift velocity determines the current in the conductor. So there is no relation of thermal velocity with the current. So only drift velocity determines the current in the conductor. So A option is correct option. So thermal velocity refers to the random motion of electron due to thermal energy. When there is no electric field, due to their thermal energy, electron move randomly. Okay, so thermal velocity refers to random motion. It does not contribute to the net flow of charges in a specific direction. Okay, so due to thermal velocity, like movement of electron is random. So it does not contribute to any net flow of charges in a specific direction. Net flow of charges in a specific direction is determined by drift velocity. Okay, so which is necessary for current. Therefore, thermal velocity alone does not determine the current in the conductor. So option B, C, and D are incorrect. Next question, NCERT example 3.7, and these questions from now onwards is multiple choice questions, more than one options. So question is, Kirchhoff's junction rule is a reflection of. First option is conservation of current density vector. Second option is conservation of charge. Third option is the fact that the momentum with which a charged particle approaches the junction is unchanged as the charged particle leaves the junction. Okay, so momentum before reaching the junction should be equal to momentum after crossing the junction. This is the C option. And D option is the fact that there is no accumulation of charges at junction. So I will give you some time to think about it. So option B and D is correct. Okay, what is the B option? Conservation of charge. What is the D option? The fact that there is no accumulation of charges at a junction. Okay, so we have discussed in detail in Kirchhoff's junction rule that it is based on conservation of charges. Okay, because conservation of charges means charges before entering the junction is equal to charges leaving the junction for a particular time interval. Okay, so this is in accordance with that there is no accumulation of charges at the junction. If there is some accumulation of charges at junction, it means that charges entering the junction and charges leaving the junction will not be same. Okay, but it is same, it is based on conservation of charge, so it represents that there is no accumulation of charges at the junction. So option B and D is correct. So using concept 17.6.1, Kirchhoff's junction rule is also known as Kirchhoff's current law, which states that algebraic sum of currents meeting at a junction is 0. So all the currents that are meeting at a junction is 0. That is sigma summation I equal to 0. In a circuit at any junction, the sum of the currents entering the junction must be equal to the sum of currents leaving the junction. That is the statement of Kirchhoff's junction rule. That sum of currents entering a junction should be equal to sum of currents leaving the junction. Here there is no accumulation of charges at junction. Charges are conserved in an electric network. Okay, the amount of charges in a particular time interval is same for charges entering the junction and charges leaving the junction. Okay, charges entering the junction and charges leaving the junction for a particular time interval is same. So Kirchhoff's junction rule is reflection of conservation of charge, and since it is reflection of conservation of charge, which means there is no accumulation of charges at junction. So option C is incorrect because at a junction the particle interacts with surrounding materials. Okay, option A is incorrect. It is not conservation of current density vector. Okay, why option C is incorrect, I will explain. At a junction the particle interacts with the surrounding materials. These interactions like collisions or changes in electric field. Why there is changes in electric field? In exemplar problem 3.1, we have discussed that there is accumulation of charges at the surface due to variation of area of cross section or due to imbalance in the distribution of charges. So there can be small amount of charges accumulation on the surface. Okay, So these interactions like collisions or changes in the electric field can change the particle momentum. So particle momentum can be changed like interaction with other material in the ions, positive with the positive ions or with another electrons, while charge is conserved. Charge is conserved. Charge entering the junction should be equal to charge leaving the junction, meaning the total charge flowing is equal the total charge out. It doesn't directly represent that momentum is conserved at a junction. So momentum can be different before entering the junction, or momentum can be different for charges leaving the junction. Okay, it is not necessarily required that momentum should be conserved. Okay, momentum of whole system is conserved, but momentum of a particular particle is cannot be said that it is conserved, because it is interacting with other material, other ions, other electrons also. Due to collision, its momentum is changing frequently. So that's why option C is incorrect. So next exemplar problem 3.8. Consider a simple circuit shown in figure 3.2. R prime or R dash represents for a variable resistance. Okay. In diagram where R dash is connected, it is variable resistance. R dash can vary from R naught to infinity. There is some R naught resistance. Okay. R naught, some reference. So R dash can vary from R naught to infinity. And small r is the internal resistance of the battery. And capital R is also given, a resistance connected between A and B part. There is two resistance connected between A and B. One is R, which is fixed. One is R dash, which is variable. And there is small r in figure 3.2. You can see small r is internal resistance of the battery having potential difference V, and I current is flowing through the circuit. Okay. So that R dash is varying from R naught to infinity. And what is capital R, that fixed resistance? Its value is much less than R naught. R naught is some reference resistance we have taken. Okay, some reference resistance R naught. So value of R is much less than R naught. And value of the internal resistance of the battery small r is much less than that fixed resistance R, as you can see in the question. Okay. So small r, that is internal resistance of the battery, it is much less than the fixed resistance capital R. And capital R is much less than R naught. That is reference resistance we have taken. Okay. Now R dash, the variable resistance can vary from, what is the range of variable resistance? Can vary from R naught to infinity. Got it? So options are: potential drop across AB is nearly constant as R dash is varied. If we vary the value of R dash from R naught to infinity, potential drop across AB is nearly constant. Okay, this is the A option. B option is current through R dash is nearly constant as R dash is varied. If we vary the value of R dash from R naught to infinity, current through R dash should be nearly constant. C option, current I depends sensitively on R dash. It means if we change the R dash by small amount, current I will change. But means it is sensitive, current I is sensitive to change in R dash. If we are changing R dash by a small amount, current I will change. So it will detect the change. And D option is R is greater than equal to V upon small r plus capital R always. So these are the four options. I will give you some time to think about it. So answer correct option is A and D. Using concept 17.7.2 and 17.13. Here the potential drop is taking place across AB and R. Okay, so both R dash and R are connected in parallel. So potential across AB is same for both the resistance. Okay, so potential drop is happening across AB point, and secondly potential drop is happening at internal resistance small r. Equivalent resistance of parallel combination of R and R dash is given by. So they are in parallel. So equivalent resistance 1 by R equivalent can be given by 1 by R plus 1 by R dash. Now, if now this value, this R equivalent, we know that R equivalent will be the equivalent resistance of parallel combination is always less than the least amount of resistance. Okay, so this fixed R is much less than R naught, and this R dash is varying from R naught to infinity, which means that fixed R is much less than R dash, this variable resistance. So this fixed R is much less than that variable resistance R dash. Okay, so R fixed R is small, so the value of R equivalent will be always less than the R, or it can be equal to R when R dash becomes infinite. Which gives R equivalent will always be less than equal to R. It will always be less than R. When it will be equal to R? When R dash becomes infinite. So for a large value of R dash, or we can say R dash is infinite, or for very large value of R dash, so R equivalent will be nearly equal to R. When R dash becomes infinite, R equivalent will be equal to R. And if there is a very large value of R dash, then R equivalent will be nearly equal to R. Now, so current in the circuit is given by I equal to V upon R plus R equivalent. Okay, current in the circuit is given by this. We will take R equivalent of both these R and R dash, and there is internal resistance small r present here. So current will be given by I equal to V upon small r plus R equivalent. Okay, now we will replace this R equivalent with R. So what will be the equation now? Since the equivalent resistance of parallel combination of R and R dash is always less than R, so equivalent resistance will be less than R always, or it will be equal to R if R becomes infinite. Therefore, for a given range of R dash, okay, this R will be always greater than R equivalent. Means equivalent resistance will be always less than R. If we place R in the place of R equivalent, in previous equation we have seen that I equal to V upon small r plus R equivalent. If we replace R equivalent with R, then that R is always greater than R equivalent. So we are increasing the denominator. So current will be less. Okay. So means this term V upon R plus R is less than the previous term. So current will always be greater than or equal to V upon small r plus capital R. Okay. Means if we start increasing the value of denominator, this term will get small. We have replaced the R equivalent with R. Okay. R equivalent is less than R. Okay. So I will be greater than equal to V upon R plus R. When I will be equal to V upon small r plus capital R, when R dash becomes infinite. Are you understanding? Initial equation was I equal to V upon small r plus R equivalent. Okay. So R equivalent is always less than equal to capital R. that fixed resistance. Okay, but if we replace the R equivalent in this equation with R, then current will always be equal to or greater than. Okay, what is the equal condition? When when R dash becomes infinite and R equivalent becomes equal to R, then I is equal to V upon small r plus capital R. Okay, but it is greater than when there is some finite value of R dash, then R equivalent will be less than R. Okay, so we have replaced the R equivalent with R, so current will be greater than this value because R equivalent is smaller than R. Okay, so I will be greater than equal to V upon R plus capital R. In parallel combination of resistances, the equivalent resistance is smaller than smallest resistance present in combination. Okay, so this is the reason here why we have taken I greater than equal to V upon small r plus capital R. It is basic maths. In parallel combination of resistance, equivalent resistance is smaller than the smallest resistance present in the combination. So what was the B option? Current through R dash is nearly constant as R dash is varied. This statement is incorrect. Why? Because the current through R dash will vary as R dash changes. Okay, current also varies. Since R dash is a part of parallel combination with R, the current through R dash will depend on its resistance value. Okay, so since it is connected in parallel with capital R dash is connected in parallel with capital R. So in parallel combination, value of current in both the branches depends on the individual resistances. Okay, if we change the value of R dash, the current through that branch will also change. Okay, so B option is incorrect, which represent that current remains constant when we vary R dash. But in actual condition, current will vary. So as R dash increases, the current through it will decrease and vice versa. So why option C is incorrect? What was C option? Current I depends on sensitively on R dash. So current I, now they are talking about current I that is in outer, that is the total current flowing through the circuit. Okay, before splitting at point A, current I. So since, okay, now they are in parallel combination R dash and R, this statement is incorrect because current I in the circuit is primarily determined by the battery voltage and internal resistance along with the parallel combination of R and R dash. Since they are in parallel, so if we are increasing the value of R dash, it is very large as compared to R. So it will affect the equivalent resistance very less. Given that R dash is much greater than R, therefore equivalent resistance of parallel combination of R and R dash will always be nearly equal to R. So equivalent resistance will be always nearly equal to R. It will not change much with the change in R dash. So since equivalent resistance is not changing, so total current I will not change significantly. So total current I does not change significantly with the variations in R dash. But the current through the particular branch will change. As in B option, current through that branches, that two parallel branches, one through R dash, one through R. Okay, that will change significantly when we change the value of R dash. But total current will not change significantly when we change the value of R dash. Next question. Temperature dependence of resistivity rho T of semiconductors, insulators, and metals is significantly based on the following factors. Number of charge carriers can change the temperature T. Time interval between two successive collisions can depend on T. Length of material can be function of T. Mass of carriers is a function of T. T is the temperature. Okay. So you have some time to solve it. So the correct option is A and B. Number of charge carriers can change with temperature T, and time interval between two successive collisions can depend on T. Okay, so the number of charge carriers that can change with temperature T is for insulator and semiconductors. And second, B option is correct. It is for metals. Okay. So using concept 17.4.1, the resistivity of a metallic conductor is given by this: rho equal to m upon n e square tau, where n is number of charge carriers per unit volume which can change with temperature T for semiconductors and insulators. That n can be changed significantly for semiconductors and insulators. But for metals, the change of n is very less. Tau is the time interval between two successive collisions which decreases with increase in temperature. Okay, when there is increase in temperature, the collisions among the electrons and with positive ions become more frequent. Okay, so the time between two successive collisions will decrease. The length of material can vary with temperature, but it does not affect resistivity because resistivity doesn't depend on dimensions of the conductor. Okay, length can be changed with the temperature. Okay, you have studied in thermal properties of matter in 11th class that length can be changed by increasing the temperature. But because resistivity is a material property, it doesn't depend upon the dimensions of the conductor. So the increase in length will not affect the resistivity. Therefore, it is not a significant factor in the temperature dependence of resistivity. The mass of the carriers is not a function of temperature. The mass of electron or holes in material remains constant regardless of temperature changes. Okay, mass will not change if we increase or decrease the temperature. So option D is also incorrect. Option C is also incorrect. Next question, NCERT Exemplar 3.10. The measurement of unknown resistance R is to be carried out using Wheatstone bridge as given in the figure below. Two students perform an experiment in two ways. The first student takes R2 equal to 10 ohm and R1 equal to 5 ohm. The other student take R2 equal to 1000 ohm, R1 equal to 500 ohm. In the standard arm, both take R3 equal to 5 ohm. Both find R equal to R2 upon R1 into R3 equal to 10 ohm with errors. Now, what are the options? Okay, so we know that in Wheatstone bridge, R1 and R2 are known resistance, R3 can be adjusted, and we have to find the R4. Or in this question, it is written as R. So R can be found by R2 by R1 into R3. So they found R equal to 10 ohm with errors. Now option is the error of the measurement of two students are the same. Second option is errors of the measurement do depend on the accuracy with which R2 and R1 can be measured. Option C is if the students uses large value of R2 and R1, the currents through the arm will be feeble. Feeble mean weak. This will make determination of null point accurately more difficult. Option D is Wheatstone bridge is very accurate instrument and has no errors of measurement. So I will give you some time to think about it. Let's see which option is correct. Option B and C is correct. Using concept 17.9. For first student, it is given that for first student calculated R2 as 10 ohm, For first student, R2 is 10 ohm, R1 is 5 ohm, and R3 is 5 ohm also. For second student, R2 is 1000 ohm, R1 is 500 ohm, and R3 is 5 ohm. Unknown resistance is R, which both students have to calculate. So now, according to balanced Wheatstone bridge rule, R2 upon R1 equal to R upon R3. Okay, which gives R equal to R3 into R2 by R1, which is also given in the question. Okay, so this thing came from balanced Wheatstone bridge rule. That is R2 upon R1 equal to R upon R3. So error in the measurement of R. So what is the error in the measurement? According to that formula, R equal to R2 upon by R into R3. That is given in the question. So error measurement is relative errors will get added. Okay, so delta R upon R, error in measurement of relative error in the measurement of R will be equal to relative error in the measurement of R1 plus relative error in the measurement of R2 plus relative error in the measurement of R3. Okay, so error of measurement do depend on the accuracy of measurement of R2 and R1. If the student uses large value of R2 and R1, the currents through the arm will be very less. Okay, if the second student is using R2 1000 ohm and R1 500, that is very large values, due to which current through the arms will be less. Okay, since the value of the current will be less, then it cannot be measured accurately. Errors will also depend on the least count values of the measuring instrument. So this will make a determination of the null point accurately more difficult. So because current is very small, so we cannot find the null point more accurately, or errors also depend on the least count of the instruments. So why option A is incorrect? The errors of the measurement of two students are the same. This option is incorrect because the error of the measurement are not necessarily the same for both students. The accuracy of measurement depends on the precision with which R2 and R1 can be measured. Different values of R2 and R1 can lead to different value of sensitivity and accuracy in the Wheatstone bridge. Since both students have taken different values of R2 and R1, so the errors can be different. Wheatstone bridge is very accurate instrument and has no error of measurement. This option is also incorrect. Okay, this option is incorrect because no measurement instrument is completely free of errors. The Wheatstone bridge, while it is accurate, still has potential sources of error such as precision of the resistors used R1, R2, R3, and the sensitivity of the galvanometer, and the ability to accurately determine the null point. So Wheatstone bridge can also have some amount of errors. Next question, the relaxation time tau is nearly independent of applied electric field E, whereas it changes significantly with temperature T. So first fact is responsible for Ohm's law, whereas second fact leads to variation of rho with temperature. Elaborate why. So I will give you some time. So solution using concept 17.2 and 17.4.1. So what is the thinking process for all this question? The higher drift velocities of the electron make collisions more frequent. Okay, if there are higher velocities, drift velocity, that collision will be more frequent, which in turn decreases the time interval between two successive collisions. Means the higher drift velocity, collisions are more frequent, which will decrease the tau, relaxation time. So the drift velocity of the electrons is given by Vd equal to E capital E upon m tau. So by rearranging, tau will be equal to m Vd upon small e capital E. So tau is dependent upon Vd and capital E. So tau is directly proportional to drift velocity and inversely proportional to electric field. So relaxation time is proportional to the velocity of the electrons and ions and electric field both. So applied electric field produces the insignificant change. Okay, if we apply the high amount of electric field also, the change in the drift velocity will be insignificant, which is of the order of 1 millimeter per second, which is very small. So it can be neglected. Okay, if we apply high electric field, the change in the drift velocity will be very insignificant, which is of the order of 1 millimeter per second, which is very small and can be neglected. Okay, so tau doesn't depend upon, in Ohm's law, we took that tau doesn't depend upon the drift velocity. Tau is a constant. Okay, so it do depend on drift velocity, but the change in the drift velocity is very small and can be neglected. So this thing supports Ohm's law. Whereas the change in temperature affects the velocity at the order of 10 raised by 2 meter per second. If we change the temperature, the velocity can be affected, and it is of the order of 10 raised by 2 meter per second. So that amount of change can happen if we change the temperature. So which is significant. The decrease in this change, large change, 10 raised by 2 meter per second in the velocity will decrease the relaxation time considerably in the metals and consequently resistivity. Okay, of metal or conductor increases as. So resistivity is equal to 1 by conductivity, 1 by sigma, that is conductivity, equal to m upon n e square tau. So mass of electron is constant, number density is nearly constant, charge on electron is constant, and if relaxation time is decreasing due to increasing temperature, this relaxation time is decreasing, so resistivity will increase. Okay, if this relaxation time is decreasing, then this resistivity will increase. Why this relaxation time decreasing? Due to increase in the temperature and more frequent collisions and increase in the velocity. And that increase is significant, which is of the order of 10 raised by 2 meter per second. So our next question, what are the advantages of the null point method in a Wheatstone bridge? What additional measurement would be required to calculate R unknown by another method? So let's see the solution. Using concept 17.9, the advantages of null point method is in Wheatstone bridge is the resistance of galvanometer does not affect the balance point. Second thing is there is no need to determine the currents in the resistance and internal resistance of the galvanometer. Third one is it is easy and convenient method for the observer. Okay, you don't have to determine the currents in different branches if the Wheatstone bridge is balanced. No need to determine the internal resistance of the galvanometer. Okay, the necessary and sufficient condition for balanced Wheatstone bridge is given by P by Q equal to R by S. P and Q are known resistances. S is unknown. R can be adjusted. So P and Q are known resistance. R can be adjusted and S is unknown. By another method, if we use another method other than null point, then R known can be calculated applying Kirchhoff's rules. So we would need additional accurate measurements of all the currents. If we choose another method, we have to determine the current in all the branches of the Wheatstone bridge and internal resistance of the galvanometer also. Okay. So next question is 3.16. For wiring in the homes, one uses copper wires and aluminum wires. What considerations are involved in this? Okay, let's see the solution. So what is the thinking process for this? The availability, conductivity, and the cost of the metal are the main criteria for selection of the metals for wirings in the home. So what is the answer? Copper, gold, and aluminium are better conductors among all the metals except silver. So silver and gold are very expensive, cannot be used for wiring in the homes. So therefore copper wires and aluminium wires are used for wiring in the homes. The main consideration are involved in this process are cost of the metal and good conductivity. So these all are good conductors. Okay, but cost we can also take into consideration. So silver and gold are very expensive, so cannot be used as home wirings. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the session.